My name is Leah. Standing in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by 250 pairs of eyes, I'm still in a daze. Just moments ago, I watched Richard Hale, my father's business partner, collapse right in front of me. The chaos that ensued was a blur, but my training kicked in, and I found myself kneeling beside him, performing CPR. Now, as the paramedics wheel him out, the room is silent, and I'm left with a flood of memories. It all started when I received an invitation from my sister, Lily, to her wedding. It was handwritten, tucked inside a plain envelope with no return address. I hadn't spoken to my family in 15 years, but something about that invitation made me feel like this wasn't just a wedding. It was a test. I remember driving to the wedding in my old car, the invitation sitting on the passenger seat. The smell of wood smoke and dying leaves filled the air, and it took me back to the last time I stood on my father's porch. I was 22 then, fresh out of college, with a dream of joining the Air Force. My father, a successful businessman who built his insurance company from the ground up, couldn't understand my decision. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps, to work in the family business and live a comfortable life. But I had seen my mother suffer from cancer, and I wanted to do something to help others. I wanted to save lives. That day, my father and I had a huge argument. He told me that I was making a big mistake, that I was throwing away my future. I tried to explain my reasons, but he wouldn't listen. In the end, he changed the locks, removed me from the family health insurance, and made it clear that I was no longer welcome in his house. I left with a single suitcase and a broken heart. When I arrived at the wedding, I was immediately reminded of how much I didn't belong. The guests were all dressed in expensive clothes, and the venue was filled with luxury and elegance. I felt like an outsider, like I was intruding on someone else's party. My father, who was sitting at the head table, didn't even acknowledge my presence. Instead, he made a snide comment about me being there out of pity. Throughout the evening, I was subjected to more insults and humiliation. My father's new wife, Carol, and her brother, Richard, took turns making fun of me and my military career. They said that I was a failure, that I couldn't handle the real world, and that I should have stayed in the family business. I tried to ignore them, but it was hard. Their words cut deep, and I felt like I was back in that kitchen, arguing with my father all over again. But then something unexpected happened. During the maid of honor speech, Lily revealed a secret that no one in the room knew. 7 years ago, she had been in a car accident and had almost drowned. A military rescue helicopter had been dispatched to the scene, and the pilot had jumped into the river and pulled her out. Lily didn't know who the pilot was at the time, but she had spent the past 5 years trying to find out. 2 years ago, she had filed a Freedom of Information Act request, and she had finally received the answer. The pilot was me. I was stunned. I had no idea that Lily knew about the rescue. I had never told anyone, not even my closest friends. I had always thought of it as just another mission, just another life saved. But for Lily, it was so much more. It was the reason she was alive, the reason she was able to stand there and get married. As Lily spoke, I could see the shock and disbelief on my father's face. He had no idea that I had saved his daughter's life. He had always thought of me as a failure, as someone who had let him down. But in that moment, he realized that he had been wrong. He realized that I was a hero, that I had done something truly remarkable. After the speech, the room erupted into applause. People stood up and cheered, and I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that I had never felt before. I looked at Lily, and she gave me a smile and a nod. It was a silent thank you, a way of letting me know that she appreciated what I had done. But the night wasn't over yet. Just as the applause died down, Richard Hale collapsed. I was the first one to reach him, and I immediately started performing CPR. I could feel the eyes of the crowd on me, but I didn't care. I was focused on saving his life. It was a long and difficult few minutes, but in the end, I was able to bring him back. The paramedics arrived and took him away, and the room was once again filled with silence. But this time, it was a different kind of silence. It was a silence of respect, a silence of admiration. As I stood there, looking at the people around me, I realized that something had changed. I had gone from being the black sheep of the family the one who had been rejected and ostracized, to being a hero, the one who had saved a life. I had finally earned the respect and admiration of my family and the people around me. But more than that, I had finally found my place. I had always felt like I didn't belong, like I was an outsider. But in that moment, I realized that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I was a pilot, a rescuer, a hero, and I was proud of who I was. After the incident, I was approached by a retired colonel named Thomas. He recognized my watch, a Marathon GSAR, and knew that I was a member of the Air Force Rescue Wing. He told me that he had served in the Air Force for 28 years and that he was impressed by my skills and my dedication. He invited me to sit at his table, and we talked for a while. He told me about his experiences in the military, and I told him about mine. It was a great conversation, and I felt like I had made a new friend. Later that night, I was given the opportunity to speak. I took the microphone and stood in front of the crowd. I told them that I had come to the wedding because my sister had invited me, and that I had never expected to be the center of attention. I told them about my military career and about the lives that I had saved. I told them that I didn't do it for the recognition or the praise, but because I wanted to help others. I also took the opportunity to address my father. I told him that I forgave him for what he had done, and that I understood that he had been trying to do what he thought was best for me. I told him that I didn't need his approval to know my worth, but that I hoped that one day he would be able to see me for who I was. As I finished speaking, the room erupted into applause. People stood up and cheered, and I felt a sense of relief and closure. I had finally said what I needed to say, and I had finally let go of the anger and the resentment that I had been holding on to for so long. The rest of the night was a blur. I danced, I laughed, I talked to people. I felt like a different person, like I had finally come out of my shell. And as I looked around the room, I realized that I had finally found my family. Not the family that I had been born into, but the family that I had created for myself. As the night came to an end, I said goodbye to my new friends and my sister. I walked out of the ballroom and onto the terrace. The air was cold and crisp, and the stars were shining bright. I took a deep breath and looked out at the world. I knew that there were still challenges ahead, but I was ready for them. I was ready to face whatever came my way because I had the support of my family and the strength of my own convictions. I got into my car and drove home. As I drove, I thought about the events of the night. I thought about the rescue, the speech, the forgiveness. I thought about how far I had come and how much I had changed. And I knew that I would never forget that night because it was the night that I had finally found myself. When I got home, I sat down at my desk and opened the scrapbook that Lily had given me. It was filled with pictures and articles about my military career, about the lives that I had saved. It was a reminder of who I was and what I had accomplished. And as I looked at the pictures, I felt a sense of pride and gratitude. I was grateful for the opportunities that I had been given, and I was grateful for the people who had supported me along the way. I closed the scrapbook and leaned back in my chair. I looked out the window and watched the stars. I knew that there were still many challenges ahead, but I was ready for them. I was ready to face whatever came my way because I had the support of my family and the strength of my own convictions. And as I sat there, I realized that I was finally home.